you have been lied to your whole life. Not by enemies. By people who meant well. They told you, be honest. Be open. Be real. Show who you are. And you believed them. You believed it so deeply that you made it your identity. You became the person who says what they feel. The person who doesn't hide. The person who gives people the real version, not the polished one, not the careful one, the raw one. And it destroyed you. Slowly. Quietly. Over years. Not all at once. That would have been easier to see. It happened in small moments. A confidence betrayed. A truth twisted. A vulnerability mocked, not loudly, but in that subtle way that cuts deeper than shouting ever could. You gave people the real you. And they didn't know what to do with it. And still, you kept giving. Because you were told that was the right thing to do. Because you believed that if you were real enough, people would be real back. Because somewhere inside you, there was still a hope that if you just opened yourself completely, someone would finally see you. Really see you. And stay. But here is the truth nobody told you. Sincerity without wisdom is not a virtue. It is a wound you keep reopening in front of people who don't even notice the blood. Marcus Aurelius knew this. Seneca knew this. Epictetus, a man who had nothing, not even his own freedom, knew this. They didn't say be dishonest. They didn't say close yourself off from the world. They said something much harder than that. They said, choose. Choose who gets the real you. Choose carefully. Choose slowly. Because not everyone who smiles at you has earned the right to your interior life. Not everyone who calls you friend deserves access to your fear. Not everyone who sits at your table has proven they can hold what is sacred. And the ones who haven't earned it, they don't get the deep rooms. They get warmth. They get kindness. But not the truth that lives in your bones. You already know who belongs where. You've known for a long time. You just kept being too generous to act on it. Too sincere. If this is hitting something real inside you, subscribe to this channel and leave a like right now. This message needs to reach more people who have been bleeding quietly for years, thinking their honesty was the problem when the real problem was never that they were honest, it was who they were honest with. I also left something in the comments for those who want to sit with this feeling longer. A quiet reflection. No rush. Just more space for what we're touching here today. There is a moment most people never talk about. Not because it doesn't happen. Because it happens to almost everyone. And it is too uncomfortable to name out loud. It is the moment you realize, the person you were most honest with was the person who deserved it least. Not a stranger. Not an enemy. Someone close. Someone you chose. Someone you trusted with the parts of yourself that you had never shown anyone else. And they didn't protect it. Maybe they shared it. Maybe they minimized it. Maybe they simply forgot it, treated it like small talk, like something disposable, when for you, saying it out loud had taken years of courage to arrive at. And in that moment, that quiet, devastating moment, something shifted inside you. Not dramatically. Not with an argument or a confrontation. Just a slow, internal closing. A door that used to be open that you quietly, without ceremony, without announcement, decided to close. And you have been living with that closed door ever since. What the Stoics understood, what Marcus Aurelius came back to again and again in those private pages he wrote for no one but himself, is that the interior life is the only life that is truly yours. Everything outside of you can be taken. Your reputation. Your possessions. Your plans. The people you love can leave. The things you built can fall. The life you imagined can become unrecognizable. But the interior, what you think, what you value, what you choose to protect and what you choose to release, that belongs to you completely. And sincerity, the kind that gives that interior life away freely, carelessly, to anyone who happens to be present, is not generosity. It is abdication. It is handing the keys to your most sacred space to someone who hasn't proven they know how to walk through it gently. Marcus didn't write about this in abstract terms. He wrote about it as a man who had been disappointed, who had trusted and been let down, who had extended himself and found the extension unreturned. He didn't become bitter, but he became precise. Precise about who entered his inner world. Precise about what he shared and what he protected. Precise about the difference between being known and being exposed. And that precision, that quiet, disciplined, deeply human precision, is what he called wisdom. Seneca wrote something that I want you to sit with. He said, in his own words and in his own time, that withdrawing into yourself is the surest road to peace. Not isolation. Not coldness. Not the building of walls so high that nothing can get through. But a conscious, deliberate return to the self. A recognition that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with your own interior world. And you cannot have a healthy relationship with your own interior world if you are constantly giving pieces of it away to people who were never equipped to receive them. Think about how much energy you have spent explaining yourself to people who weren't listening. Think about how many times you said something true and real and vulnerable and watched it fall flat, not because what you said wasn't worth hearing, but because the person in front of you simply didn't have the depth to receive it. That is not your failure. That is a mismatch. And the Stoics were ruthless about mismatches. Not cruel. Not dismissive. But honest. They understood that you cannot pour water into a broken vessel and expect it to hold. It doesn't matter how pure the water is. It doesn't matter how carefully you pour. If the vessel is broken, the water is lost. And you have been pouring yourself into broken vessels your entire life and then wondering why you feel empty. Here is what I want you to understand. The problem was never that you were too honest. The problem was never that you cared too much. The problem was never that you wanted to be known. That desire, to be truly known by another human being, is one of the most human desires that exists. It is not weakness. It is not neediness. It is evidence that you are alive and awake and real. The problem was the direction. You aimed that desire at people who had not done the work to be ready for it. People who were still too caught up in their own survival to have space for someone else's truth. People who were too defended themselves to be able to hold what was defenseless in you. People who were simply at a different place in their own journey. Not better, not worse, just different. And that difference meant that what you needed to give had nowhere safe to land. And here is the hardest part of this. You knew. Deep down, in that quiet place below the noise, you knew before you opened your mouth. You knew before you trusted. You knew before you gave. There was something, a flicker, a hesitation, a small voice, that said wait. That said not this person. That said not yet. And you silenced it. Because you wanted to believe. Because you were tired of carrying it alone. Because the need to be known was louder, in that moment, than the voice of discernment. And I am not saying that to make you feel guilty. I am saying it because recognizing that voice, learning to hear it earlier, to trust it more, to honor it before the cost becomes too high, that is the whole work. That is the practice the Stoics devoted their lives to. Not the elimination of feeling. Not the suppression of desire. But the discipline of attention. The discipline of pausing before acting. Of asking, not do I want to say this? But is this person ready to receive it? Have they shown me, through time and action and consistency, that they can be trusted with what is real in me? If the answer is no, you say nothing. Not from fear. Not from bitterness. Not because you are punishing them. But because some things are too sacred to be left in careless hands. And this is where the real shift happens. Because once you begin to practice this, once you begin to feel the difference between speaking from wisdom and speaking from need, something changes in the way you move through the world. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided what they think of you. You stop confessing your wounds to people who collect wounds like currency. You stop trying to be understood by people who are not interested in understanding, only in having something to hold. And you start, quietly, slowly, without announcement, becoming more yourself. Not less. More. Because the paradox of protecting your interior life is this. The less you give it away carelessly, the more of it you actually have. When you stop bleeding in public, you have more left for the moments that truly matter. For the people who have earned it. For the conversations that are real. For the rare, extraordinary moments when two human beings actually see each other. Not the surface version, not the careful version, but the true one. And something deep recognizes something deep, and neither one flinches. Those moments exist. They are rare. But they exist. And you will never find them if you have already exhausted yourself on every person who seemed safe enough in the moment. Epictetus, the man who had no freedom, no possessions, no power over anything external, said that the chief task in life is to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices I actually make. Read that again slowly. The chief task in life. Not one of the tasks. The chief task. To know what is mine and what is not. To know what I can govern and what I cannot. To stop exhausting myself over the things that were never in my hands and to pour that recovered energy into the only thing that always was, my own choices. My choice of what to think. My choice of what to value. My choice of who enters the deeper rooms. My choice of what I protect and what I release. That is where freedom lives. Not in being more open. Not in being more honest. Not in giving more of yourself to more people in the hope that eventually someone will finally hold it right. Freedom lives in the discipline of the interior gate. In knowing, calmly, firmly, without apology, that you are the only one who decides what enters your inner world and what stays out. Many people who find their way to this kind of reflection ask me how to continue it in daily life. Not just in the quiet of a video, but in the ordinary moments, the conversations, the relationships, the small daily choices about what to say and what to hold. That's why I left a small book in the comments. Something gentle and unhurried that goes deeper into exactly this. The practice of protecting your interior life without closing your heart. It's there for you whenever you're ready. No pressure. Just an open door. If this reflection is still sitting with you, if something in what we've been exploring today is touching a place that has been quiet for a long time, I want to ask you one thing. Write one word in the comments. Just one word. The word that best describes what you are feeling right now, in this moment. Not an explanation. Not a paragraph. One word. Because sometimes one word says more than 1,000. And I read them. Every one. There comes a point in life when you stop trying to be understood and start trying to understand yourself. Not as a defeat. Not as giving up. As a rival. As the quiet, profound recognition that the search you were conducting outward, the search for someone who would finally see you completely, hold you without flinching, know the worst of you and stay, was always, underneath everything, a search that needed to turn inward first. Because nobody, no matter how much they love you, no matter how long they have known you, no matter how deeply they care, nobody can give you the kind of knowing that you can only give yourself. And that is not a tragedy. That is the most liberating truth you will ever face. The Stoics didn't talk much about self-love in the way we use that phrase today. They talked about something quieter and harder and more real. They talked about self-knowledge. Marcus Aurelius didn't sit down every night to write in those private pages because he was trying to perform wisdom for someone else. He sat down because he was trying to know himself. Honestly. Without flattery. Without excuses. He wrote about his failures as plainly as his intentions. He questioned himself in places where other men of his position would have simply demanded the world adjust. He turned the examination inward. Not as punishment. As practice. The practice of knowing, truly knowing, who he was, what he valued, where he was falling short of his own standards, and what he needed to do differently tomorrow. And that practice, that daily, humble, unspectacular practice, is what made him wise. Not the throne. Not the power. Not the victories in war or the expansion of borders. the willingness to sit with himself and tell himself the truth. And here is where everything we have been talking about comes together into something you can carry with you after this video ends. The real reason sincerity without wisdom destroys you is not because people are dangerous. It is because when you pour yourself outward constantly, when your default is to give, explain, confess, reveal, you never stop long enough to listen to yourself. You are so busy being known by others that you forget to know yourself. You are so occupied with being seen that you stop seeing. You are so caught in the exhausting work of making other people understand you that you lose your own thread. And without that thread, the quiet internal thread that connects you to what you actually think, to what you actually feel, to what you actually need, you become a version of yourself that exists only in reaction to other people. Their opinions shape you. Their acceptance defines you. Their rejection undoes you. And that is not living. That is surviving. On borrowed terms. In someone else's language. At someone else's pace. Epictetus said it simply. He always said things simply. He didn't have the luxury of complexity. His life was too real for that. He said, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." What he meant, what he was pointing toward in that spare, stripped-down way of his, was this: the war is not with the world. The war was never with the world. The war is with the part of you that keeps believing the world owes you a witness. That keeps believing if you are just honest enough, open enough, real enough, someone will finally show up and say, "I see you. All of you. And it's enough." That moment may come. For some people, it does. But it cannot be chased. It cannot be forced. It cannot be manufactured through sincerity alone. It arrives, when it arrives, as a consequence of two people who have both done the interior work, who have both learned to know themselves, who have both learned to be honest inward before being honest outward, who have both arrived at that rare quiet place where they no longer need to be saved by being seen, they simply want to share what they have found. That is the difference between the sincerity that bleeds and the openness that nourishes. One comes from hunger. The other comes from fullness. And you who have been carrying this weight for longer than you should have, you are being invited today to begin the slow, unhurried, entirely worthwhile work of becoming full. Not by closing yourself off. Not by becoming hard or guarded or cold. But by turning some of that honesty, that beautiful, exhausting, generous honesty, inward. By being as honest with yourself as you have always been with everyone else. By asking yourself the questions you have been too busy to ask. What do I actually feel, beneath the explanation, beneath the justification, beneath the story I keep telling? Who in my life has genuinely earned access to the real me? And who have I simply allowed in out of habit, out of loneliness, out of the fear of being alone with myself? What have I been giving away that I needed to keep? What have I been saying out loud that deserved to stay sacred? These are not comfortable questions. They are not meant to be. But they are honest ones. And honest questions, the kind you ask yourself in silence, are the only ones that actually change anything. Because here is what I have come to understand after years of sitting with these ideas, after years of watching what happens to people who learn this lesson early versus those who learn it late. It is never too late to begin. The door to your own interior life is never locked from the outside. It is only ever locked from the inside. And the key, the only key that has ever worked, is the decision to stop waiting for the world to understand you and to start, quietly and seriously, understanding yourself. To stop explaining and start listening. To stop performing and start reflecting. To stop pouring and start filling. Not all at once. Not in a dramatic gesture. Not with an announcement. Just in the small, daily, almost invisible choices. The choice to pause before speaking. The choice to ask, does this person deserve this piece of me? The choice to honor the voice that says not now, not here, not this person, instead of silencing it in the name of openness. The choice to be, above all else, honest with yourself. Marcus Aurelius, in what feels like his most human moment, his most tired and real and unguarded moment, wrote words that I keep coming back to. He wrote, essentially, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Not happiness. Not resolution. Not the guarantee that things will go the way you want. Strength. The quiet, unshakable, interior kind of strength that doesn't depend on whether the world is fair, or whether people are kind, or whether the ones you loved treated what you gave them with the care it deserved. That strength is available to you. Right now. Today. Not when things get better. Not when people change. Not when circumstances finally align. Now. In the decision to stop measuring your worth by how well other people receive your truth, and to start measuring it by how honestly you face yourself. I want to leave you with something simple. Not a conclusion. Not a lesson. Just a question to carry with you after this ends. What would change in your life if you stopped trying to be understood by everyone and focused instead on understanding yourself? Not as a thought experiment. As a practice. Starting tomorrow. Starting in the first quiet moment you find. Starting in the pause before you speak, when the old habit says tell them, explain it, make them see, and the new wisdom says wait. Breathe. Is this necessary? Is this the right person? Is this the right moment? That pause. That small, almost imperceptible pause between impulse and action. That is where the whole of Stoic philosophy lives. That is where Marcus sat every night with his pen. That is where Seneca found the language for what he knew. That is where Epictetus, with nothing but his own mind, built a freedom that no one could take from him. That pause is available to you too. If this reflection kept echoing inside you today, if there was something in it that felt less like a new idea and more like a truth you had forgotten you already knew, I want to gently tell you, that recognition means something. It means you are ready, not to change everything overnight, but to begin. To begin the quiet, serious, deeply personal work of choosing yourself before you offer yourself to anyone else. I left something in the comments for those who feel this and want to continue. A small book that walks gently through exactly this terrain. The practice of protecting your interior life, of learning discernment, of finding the kind of peace that doesn't depend on being understood. It's there for you. Whenever you're ready. In your own time. With no rush. And if this video touched something real in you today, if you are leaving this with something heavier than you arrived with, but also somehow lighter, subscribe to this channel. Not for me. For you. Because this is the kind of conversation that needs to happen more often. In a world that is loud and fast and constantly demanding your attention, this is a space for the quieter questions. The ones that actually matter. The ones that stay with you. Leave a like. Leave a word in the comments. Or just sit in the silence for a moment before you go back to the noise. Because sometimes, the most honest thing you can do is simply be still. And listen. To yourself. The real power was never in how much you revealed. It was always in how clearly you could see.